By dawn, the whole town was ready to watch a boy die for a man they already buried. Caleb Ward sat alone in the back of the livery, fingers wrapped around a whiskey bottle that had been empty since midnight, staring at the noose swaying outside on the gallows. Wind scraped dust along Main Street, whispering like the voices he heard every night. "That's him, Caleb. That's the man who killed my daddy. That's the man who burned our house." He heard that voice most of all, even though the boy who owned it had never spoken a word to him. Not yet. They called Caleb a lot of things in Deadstone Ridge: gun hand, killer, former right arm of Judge Morrow, the iron-fisted land baron who'd ruled half the territory with a pen in his left hand and a firing squad in his right. But the name that hurt the most was the one whispered behind his back: coward. Coward, because he'd only tried to grow a conscience when it was too late. The boy in the jail cell was named Luke Harlow. 10 years old. Dark hair, big eyes, the kind that still looked for kindness even when the world had beat it out of him. They said he shot a man who worked for Morrow. They said Luke had to hang to keep the peace. Caleb knew better. Luke was bait. This town was a trap, and the rope outside was a message meant for him. Caleb stepped into the street, spurs ringing soft against the packed dirt. The sky was a hard gray, swallowing the early light, and every window watched him like a jury. He could feel their hate, their fear, their secret hope that maybe the hanging would be enough to keep Morrow's riders from coming back. Caleb knew Morrow. Blood just made him hungrier. He walked past the gallows without looking up and headed straight for the sheriff's office. Sheriff Dunn sat behind his desk, boots up, hat low, fingers drumming on a stack of unpaid wanted posters. His badge was polished bright, but his eyes were tired and mean. "Morning, Sheriff," Caleb said, voice low, steady. The way you talk to a rattlesnake you don't want to wake up too fast. Dunn didn't move his boots. "You're up early, Ward. Big day," he said. "Town's expecting a show." "You're hanging a child," Caleb said. "That ain't a show. That's a stain." Dunn shrugged. "Judge Morrow wired last night. Says the boy murdered one of his men. Says he wants justice." Judge Morrow doesn't know the meaning of the word. Caleb took a step closer, the air in the room shrinking. "You know that." The sheriff's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. "I know I got a badge and a town to keep standing. Morrow wants the boy dead, or he rides in with 20 men and burns this place to the ground. Men, women, children, everyone pays. You know that too. You helped him do it, more than once." The words hit like a hammer, but Caleb didn't flinch. He'd already carved his sins into his bones. "Let me talk to the boy," he said. "Alone." "Why?" "Because if you're going to hang him for my sins," Caleb said quietly, "I at least owe him the truth." Dunn stared at him, weighing something heavy. At last, he grabbed a key off the hook and nodded toward the back. "You get 5 minutes. And Ward?" Caleb paused, hand on the cell door. "Don't make me shoot you today." "No promises," Caleb muttered. He stepped into the dim cell block, where the smell of iron and old sweat clung to stone like ghosts. Luke sat on the narrow cot, knees pulled to his chest, fingers wrapped around the bars like they were the only thing holding him steady. His wrists were raw from the rope. His eyes snapped up at Caleb's boots, then his gun, then his face. "You here to watch too?" Luke asked, voice shaky but sharp. "Everybody wants a good look before they hang the freak, right?" Caleb took off his hat, suddenly feeling the weight of his years, of every life he'd taken. "No, I'm here because I know who your daddy was." Luke froze. The anger in his eyes flickered, confusion pushing through. "You don't know nothing about my daddy." Elias Harlow. Caleb said. Tall, black hair, scar on his cheek from a busted bottle. Built a house out past the ridge. Kept a Bible by the bed, even when there was no food on the table. Luke went pale. How do you know that? Caleb swallowed hard. The words tasted like gun smoke and regret. Because I was there the night Judge Morrow sent men to take his land. I was one of those men. The boy lunged at the bars, fingers clawing toward Caleb's throat. You're lying. My daddy fought bandits, rustlers. He wasn't killed by some coward with a badge on his gun belt. Caleb didn't move. He let the boy's rage crash against him like waves on rock. He'd earned every ounce of it. Your daddy died standing, Caleb said softly. He put himself between us and you, your ma, your little sister. Morrow wanted the land, and he wanted a message sent to the others who wouldn't sell. I was supposed to pull the trigger. I hesitated. Another man took the shot. House went up in flames. His voice broke, just for a second. I thought all of you died that night. Luke's breath hitched. My ma, my sister, they did, he said, voice cracking. Morrow's riders came back looking for survivors. I hid in a root cellar for 2 days and listened to the coyotes eat what was left. Caleb closed his eyes. The room tilted. And now they want to hang you for killing one of Morrow's men. He found me working at the freight yard, Luke spat. Said the land was always Morrow's, said my daddy was a thief. He laughed when I said my daddy was a good man. So I took his gun, and I didn't mean to shoot him. My hands shook. Tears filled his eyes, shining in the dim light. Now they say the only way to stop Morrow from killing everyone is to kill me first. Caleb knelt, so they were eye level. Listen, Luke, you're not dying today for something you did. You're dying because of who you are. A reminder. Proof Morrow's not God yet, no matter how much land he steals. He wants to erase your name same way he's been trying to erase mine. You? Luke whispered. Who are you? Caleb stared at his own reflection in the iron bars. I'm the man who should have died the night your daddy did, he said. And I'm done running from that. He stood, jaw set. You're not hanging today. Luke laughed bitterly. A broken sound. You can't stop it. There's a rope outside and half the town ready to cheer. I've stopped worse things, Caleb said. And this time I'm doing it for the right reason. He turned toward the door, heart pounding with a fear that felt almost holy. Sheriff Dunn was waiting, hand resting on his holster. Time's up, he said. I'm taking the boy, Caleb replied. Dunn's eyes went cold. No, Ward, you're not. Morrow doesn't get to write the end of this story, Caleb said. Not again. For a long, breathless moment, only the ticking clock on the wall dared to make a sound. Caleb could feel the town outside, hear the growing murmur of voices gathering around the gallows. The whole world felt like it was holding its breath. Sheriff Dunn sighed, the sound of a man standing in the middle of a burning bridge. You draw that gun in here, son, and there's no going back for either of us. Caleb's fingers brushed the worn handle of his revolver. There's been no going back since the night Elias Harlow died, he said. Question is, who's still got a road forward? The gunshot never came. First, there was only silence, heavy and strange, like the world was trying to decide which way to fall. Sheriff Dunn's hand hovered near his gun. Caleb's fingers rested on his own, and the boy watched them both from the cell like a trapped animal waiting to see which hunter would strike. Slowly, Dunn dropped his hand. You think breaking that kid out is going to fix what you did? He asked, voice low, bitter. You think it'll bring back every man Morrow put in the dirt with your help? No, Caleb said. I'm just tired of adding names to the list. Dunn studied him, jaw working. You don't know Morrow like I do. I know him well enough to hate myself, Caleb replied. That's plenty. The sheriff cursed under his breath, then moved to the window. The crowd outside was thickening. Men with folded arms, women clutching shawls, kids craning their necks to see the platforms and the rope like it was some twisted holiday. If I let you walk out of here with that boy, Morrow's riders will come, Dunn said. They'll burn this town to the ground. No, Caleb said. If you hang that boy, Morrow's riders will come to watch. They'll smile while they do it. Dunn flinched like the words hit a nerve. You don't know that. I know Morrow doesn't forgive loose ends. The boy's not just a reminder. He's a threat. Proof you can survive him. Caleb stepped closer. You ain't protecting this town by killing Luke. You're helping Morrow finish what he started. Dunn stared out the window a long moment, fingers tightening on the sill. When he spoke again, his voice was rough. You always did talk too good for a killer. He turned, snatched the key from his belt, and jabbed it at Caleb's chest. You got 10 minutes, he said. I'll tell the crowd there's a delay. You take that boy, and you run far. You hear me? You don't bring Morrow's war back to this door. Caleb took the key, but shook his head. We're not running. Then you're both dead, Dunn snapped. And when Morrow comes, so is everyone else here. There's another way, Caleb said. But I need you to be braver than you've been in years. Dunn's eyes narrowed. What are you planning? To stop being the weapon that man swings, Caleb answered, and make him bleed for once. He went back to the cell, hands steady now. Luke scrambled to his feet as the lock turned, chains rattling. What's happening? You're walking out of here, Caleb said. You got a choice to make, Luke. You can keep being the scared kid hiding in a cellar, or you can walk with me and face the man who took everything from you. The boy's chin trembled. I'm just a kid. So was I, first time I killed for him, Caleb said quietly. Difference is, no one pulled me out. I'm trying to pull you out. Luke looked from Caleb to the open cell door. Slowly, like his limbs were made of glass, he stepped forward. If I go with you, he asked, you promise I don't hang today? You have my word, Caleb said. And my gun. Dunn appeared in the doorway, hat low, badge catching a sliver of light. Crowd's restless, he muttered. They want blood. Give them a story instead, Caleb said. Tell them Morrow's men are already on the way. Tell them I rode out to draw his fire. That true? Dunn asked. It will be, Caleb said. The sheriff nodded once. There's horses out back. Take the bay and the paint. They're the fastest. And Ward? Caleb paused. This is the last favor you ever get from me. I reckoned it was the first, Caleb said. Outside, the air felt hotter, tighter. Caleb kept Luke close as they slipped out the back of the jail, mounting up in the alley behind the livery. Voices swelled from the front of the building, frustrated, confused. The boy's hands shook on the reins. I've never ridden far, Luke admitted. Just to town and back. You're about to learn quick, Caleb said. Stay in my dust, not behind it. They kicked their horses into a run, streaking down the narrow lane, turning away from Main Street. Dust rose in a burning wave behind them. Caleb heard someone shout. A woman screamed, but no gunshots followed. Not yet. They tore out of town, past the last sagging fence posts and dying cottonwoods, into the wide open that swallowed all secrets and sins. The land stretched brown and gold to the horizon, broken only by rock spires and the faint shadow of distant hills. The sky was too big, too bright, like it was laughing at human trouble. Where are we going? Luke yelled over the wind. "To a place Morrow won't ride into unless he has to," Caleb shouted back, "and a place I swore I'd never go again." They rode hard until the town was a smear behind them, and the sun clawed its way higher. Luke's horse began to lather, but the boy held on, jaw clenched, eyes fixed on Caleb's back. There was fear in that gaze, but something harder too, a seed of hate that had been watered for years. By midday, they reached the edge of a dry riverbed, empty as a broken promise. Jagged rocks lined the banks like teeth. Caleb slowed, scanning the cliffs. "We're close," he said. Luke wiped sweat and dust from his face. "Close to what?" Caleb hesitated. The name would change everything. "Apache land," he said finally, "or what's left of it." Luke stared. "They ain't friendly with our kind." "Can't blame them," Caleb replied. "But there's a man out here who owes me a bullet. I'm hoping he'll trade it for a favor." They dismounted, leading the horses down into the riverbed. Heat shimmered off the stones, warping the air. Caleb felt eyes on him long before he heard the sound, a soft click, the creak of leather, the almost inaudible rustle of bodies shifting among the rocks. "Keep your hands where they can see them," Caleb murmured. "And don't reach for anything, not even your nose." Luke swallowed hard. At the far end of the gorge, 3 figures stepped into view, painted faces blending with the stone. Bows half raised, rifles in calloused hands. The man in the center was older now, hair streaked with gray, but his eyes were the same cold, sharp coal Caleb remembered. "You got some kind of death wish, Ward," he called. "Walking back into my canyon." Caleb lifted his hands. "Good to see you too, Greyhawk," he said. Luke's eyes widened. "You know him?" "I used to hunt him," Caleb answered. "And one day, he decided to stop running." Greyhawk came closer, boots sure on the loose stone. "You bring trouble with you," he said. "I can smell Morrow's stink even out here." "He's coming," Caleb said. "With riders, for the boy." Greyhawk's gaze shifted to Luke. The boy stood straight, fists clenched, fear pushing against pride. "Who is he?" "Luke Harlow," Caleb said. "His father died because of me. I'm trying to make sure the son doesn't." Greyhawk studied Caleb for a long beat, then spat to the side. "You killed my brother," he said. "Then you saved my boy when the cavalry came. I swore I'd repay you with one of those things. I ain't decided which yet." "I'm here to help you decide," Caleb replied. "Morrow thinks he owns every acre from here to the ridge. He took your land, same as he took the Harlows. I aim to cut him somewhere he'll feel." "You come for war?" Greyhawk asked. "I come to end one," Caleb said. "But I can't do it alone anymore." Greyhawk's jaw tightened. His men shifted, watching Luke like he was a stray spark in dry grass. Finally, the Apache leader nodded once. "You and the boy can drink," he said. "You can rest. Then you tell me how you plan to kill a man the law keeps cleaning up after." Caleb exhaled, tension bleeding from his shoulders. "With the truth," he said. "And with something he's forgotten." "What's that?" "That ghosts don't stay buried forever. Night in Greyhawk's camp was a different kind of dark. No lanterns, no town glow, just stars, hard and white and endless, watching from a sky that didn't care who lived or died. Fires burned low and quiet, smoke mixing with the smell of horses and dust. Drums beat somewhere far off, slow and steady as a heartbeat. Caleb sat near the edge of the circle, rolling a chipped tin cup between his palms. Luke slept a few feet away, wrapped in a blanket too big for his narrow shoulders, his face soft for the first time since Caleb had met him. In the shifting firelight, the boy looked younger, vulnerable, like the child he'd been before the world set him on fire. Greyhawk lowered himself onto the rock beside Caleb, joints clicking. "He trusts you," the Apache said. "That's dangerous." Caleb half smiled without humor. "You're telling me." Greyhawk watched the sleeping boy. "You never had children." "Men like me don't get that kind of grace," Caleb said. "You got hands," Greyhawk replied. "We all choose what to build with them." They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the wind scrape across the stones. "You said you wanted to hurt Morrow," Greyhawk finally said. "Not just kill. Hurt." "Killing him without breaking what he built won't change nothing," Caleb said. "Another man with a pen and a gun will stand where he fell. I want the folks in that town to see what he really is. I want the wires to carry his shame, not his orders." Greyhawk's eyes narrowed. "You have a plan." "I know where the bodies are buried," Caleb said. "Literally. Morrow's been hiding the men he killed, the land he stole, under clean paper and paid witnesses. There's a ledger in his strongbox. Names, dates, bribes. If I get my hands on it, I can tear his world apart." "And you think he will let you walk into his house and take it?" Greyhawk asked. Caleb shook his head. "He'll shoot me on sight. That's why I'm not walking in the front." Greyhawk waited. "Morrow built a private line," Caleb said slowly. "Telegraph from his ranch to the courthouse in Deadstone Ridge. No one else. Uses it. He sends orders, instructions, lies. The operator in town is scared of him, but more scared of losing his job. If we cut that line at the right time, send our own message with his signature, we can drag him into town on his own strings." "You plan to trick a spider into his own web," Greyhawk said. "And then burn the web," Caleb replied, "with everyone watching." "You will need proof," Greyhawk said. "More than a message." "That's where you come in," Caleb said. "And the people Morrow hurt. The ranchers, the widows, the ones he pushed off their land. If we get them to town, if they stand there while Morrow sputters and rages, the sheriff won't be able to pretend he doesn't see it anymore." Greyhawk snorted softly. "You think shame can stop a man who sleeps on bones?" "No," Caleb said, "but it can stop the people around him from holding his coat." Greyhawk considered that. "And the boy?" "Morrow wants him dead," Caleb said. "We put Luke where everyone can see him. Let Morrow lock eyes with the child of the man he killed. Let the town see which one of them looks like the monster." Greyhawk leaned back, studying Caleb's face. "You are asking my people to ride into a town that helped drive us off this land. You are asking them to stand beside the same men who called us animals. I'm asking you to make sure Morrow never does it again to anyone," Caleb said. "Apache, settler, kid with no place to run." Greyhawk was silent for so long, Caleb began to think he'd lost him. Finally, the old warrior sighed. "You saved my son because your hands moved before your orders did," he said. "Some part of you knew you were not made to be a leash." He rose, bones cracking. "At dawn we ride," Greyhawk said. "Not for you, not for them. For the land he stole and the dead he doesn't remember." Caleb nodded, something like gratitude twisting in his chest. "That's enough for me." He didn't sleep that night. He watched the stars wheel overhead and listened to Luke mumble in his dreams. The boy's fingers twitched, reaching for something that wasn't there. A mother, a father, a house that didn't burn. When dawn bled pale over the horizon, Caleb shook Luke awake. "Time to go," he said. The boy blinked, disoriented, then sat up quick. "Did I hang and this is heaven?" he muttered. Caleb snorted. "If this is heaven, it's got a sense of humor." They ate quick, hard bread, tougher meat, and saddled the horses. Greyhawk and a dozen of his fighters mounted up too, silent shadows against the rising sun, faces painted, weapons ready. The air hummed with something sharp, electric. Not just anger, purpose. "You stay close to me," Caleb told Luke. "No matter what happens. You see gunfire, you don't run toward it, you hear?" Luke nodded, lips pressed thin. "What if they shoot you?" "Then you ride," Caleb said. "You find Greyhawk. You live. That's the only part of this story that matters." "No," Luke said quietly. "It ain't." They reached the ridge above the telegraph line by mid-morning. From there, they could see Morrow's ranch house in the distance. Whitewashed walls, tall fence, flags snapping in the breeze like he owned the sky too. The line itself ran like a black vein across the land. Caleb and Luke slid down to the poles while the Apaches spread out, keeping watch. Caleb found the junction box, fingers moving with old muscle memory. "You ever send a telegraph?" he asked. Luke shook his head. "I can barely write my name." "Good," Caleb said. "Words are trouble anyway." He tapped the line, listening. On the edge of hearing came the faint stutter of code. Orders, schedules, lies. Caleb cut the wire, spliced in his own rig, and began tapping. His hand shook once, then settled. Years ago, he'd sent messages that signed men's death warrants. Today, he was sending one that might sign his own. He finished, stepped back, and listened as the line crackled to life, carrying his lie straight into the heart of the monster. "What did it say?" Luke asked. "That Judge Morrow is wanted in town," Caleb said. "Urgent meeting. Land titles in question. Needs to appear in person with his ledger, or risk losing everything." Luke blinked. "You think he'll fall for that?" "Morrow doesn't trust anyone," Caleb said. "If he thinks there's a chance someone's messing with his land, he'll ride in himself. He'll want to put his boot on their neck." Greyhawk's men watched the ranch through spyglasses. After a tense half-hour, dust rose near the big house. Riders. A small group, moving fast. A carriage at the center like a black beetle. "He comes," Greyhawk said. "Then we go," Caleb replied. They angled their ride to circle around Deadstone Ridge, giving Morrow's party time to reach town first. By the time they arrived on the outskirts, the streets were already boiling with noise. Word traveled faster than bullets in places like this. Caleb pulled up on a low hill overlooking the main road. From here, he could see it all. Morrow's carriage parked in front of the courthouse, his armed men sneering at the townsfolk, the sheriff standing stiff on the steps. The gallows still stood, empty now, a wooden throat waiting for a body. Luke's hands tightened on the reins. "He's right there," the boy whispered, voice shaking with something colder than fear. "That's him." Caleb followed his gaze. The man stepping down from the carriage looked smaller than he'd remembered. Gray hair slicked back from a sharp face, fine coat, polished boots. But his eyes were the same, flat, hungry, bored with other people's pain. He carried a leather ledger under one arm like it was holy scripture. Caleb's gut twisted. Memories flashed. Morrow laughing while a house burned. Morrow pouring whiskey while Caleb wiped blood from his hands. Morrow clapping him on the shoulder, calling him son, like that word was a trick. "Greyhawk," Caleb said, voice low. "You see him?" "I see a man who thinks the wind answers to his whistle," the Apache replied. "Storm's coming, he doesn't smell yet." "Today," Caleb said, "we make sure he feels every drop they rode into Deadstone Ridge like ghosts returning to a crime scene." People on the boardwalks went quiet when they saw the Apaches. Hands twitched toward rifles. Mothers snatched kids back. Old men muttered curses into their beards. But no one fired. Not yet. Something in the way Greyhawk and his riders moved told even the bravest idiot this wasn't the day to start a new war. Caleb kept Luke close beside him, hat brim low, gun heavy at his hip. They dismounted in front of the courthouse, hooves clattering on the packed earth, spurs chiming in the tense quiet. Judge Morrow turned, annoyance flickering over his face at the interruption, then freezing when he saw who led the group. His eyes widened, just a fraction. "Caleb Ward," he said, voice sharp as broken glass. "Like a bad penny. I should have thrown you away proper when you ran." Caleb smiled, a small, dead thing. "You tried," he said. "I'm hard to bury." Morrow's gaze flicked to Luke, then to Greyhawk, then to the crowd. He measured everyone, like he always did, stacking them on his mental scales. "What is this circus?" he asked. "Sheriff, I was summoned for official business, not some parade of savages and strays." Sheriff Dunn's face was pale, but his voice held. "You were summoned, Judge," he said, "on town authority. We got questions about how you came by some of this land you're so proud of." Morrow laughed. "Questions? About land? My boy, I own your paycheck. I own half the roofs on this street. You want to bite the hand that feeds you, you better grow sharper teeth." Caleb stepped forward, boots loud on the wooden steps. "He doesn't need sharper teeth," he said. "He just needed a spine." Morrow's eyes hardened. "You forget who made you," he said quietly. "Who pulled you out of the mud and gave you a gun, a horse, a purpose." "You gave me a leash," Caleb said. "I wore it long enough," the crowd murmured, shifting closer. Faces hungry for drama, tired of fear. Wives of men who'd gone missing on Morrow's land. Ranchers who lost water rights with one stroke of his pen. A widow clutching a folded deed like a dead flower. Greyhawk moved to stand on Caleb's left, Luke on his right. For the first time in years, Caleb didn't feel like he was standing alone on the wrong side of a gun. Morrow followed their line with his gaze and smiled slowly, cruelly. "Is this your new family, Caleb?" he sneered. "A half-grown orphan and the savage who used to put your face on his wanted posters? You always did have strange taste." He turned his attention to Luke, eyes narrowing. "You look familiar, boy," he said. "What's your name?" Luke's hands were shaking, but his voice, when it came, was clear. "Luke Harlow." The name hit Morrow like a slap. For a half-second, his mask cracked. Caleb saw recognition, then irritation, then something ugly and satisfied. "Ah," Morrow said slowly. "The seed of that stubborn fool up by the ridge." He glanced at Caleb. "I thought we burned that whole problem to ash." Caleb felt Luke tremble beside him. He laid a steadying hand on the boy's shoulder. "You hear that?" he asked the crowd, voice rising. "From the man who sent riders to protect this town? The man whose word you trust more than your own eyes?" Morrow's jaw tightened. "Watch yourself." "I did your dirty work for years," Caleb said. "I hauled farmers off their land, watched houses burn, buried your secrets in holes no one was meant to find. You told me we were building law, order, civilization." He pointed at Luke. "That boy's father stood up to you, said no, said land didn't belong to a man just because he could afford ink. You called him a thief. You sent us in. You watched him die. And when his son survived, you just waited until you could hang him for defending himself." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Whispers turned sharp. "He's lying," Morrow snapped. "This is a disgruntled hired gun and a wild-eyed kid with a grudge. Caleb would say anything to hurt me. He's been trying to rewrite his sorry life ever since he ran like a dog with his tail between his legs." "Then open your ledger," Caleb said calmly. Morrow blinked. What? Your ledger, Caleb repeated. The one you never let out of your sight. The one you brought with you today because you thought you were riding in to fix your precious land titles. You keep everything in there, don't you? Names, deals, payments, what you paid your riders, what you paid the judge out in Dry Fork, what you paid to make 3 dead Harlows disappear on paper. Morrow's men shifted uneasily. Some looked at their boss, some looked at each other. That book is private, Morrow said. Business. Your business is this town's blood, Caleb said. If I'm lying, then you got nothing to fear. Show them. Show them you never paid a man named Briggs the day the Harlow place burned. Show them you never bought Sheriff Dunn's election. Show them you never signed off on raids against Greyhawk's people even after the treaty. All eyes swung to the sheriff. Dunn looked like a man standing on the edge of a cliff he'd pretended wasn't there. Judge, he said slowly, if you're clean, there's no harm in— You ungrateful fool, Morrow snarled. You think these dirt farmers will feed you when I pull my money? You think those savages will keep your streets safe when the outlaws come? He clutched the ledger tighter. I built this place. You bled it, Greyhawk said quietly. Morrow rounded on him. I kept you alive, he spat. I could have wiped you out. Instead, I fenced off a little patch of dust and let you dance on it like you still owned something. You fenced a graveyard and called it a favor, Greyhawk replied. Today, the bones talk back. Caleb stepped closer. Last chance, he said softly. Hand over the book. Walk out of here alive. Morrow's eyes flicked to Luke again. Something cruel lit behind them. You always were sentimental, he said to Caleb. That's why you needed me, to do what you couldn't. He yanked a pistol from inside his coat, not at Caleb, not at Greyhawk, but at the boy. The world narrowed to the circle between that barrel and Luke's chest. Caleb moved without thinking. Years ago, he'd hesitated. This time, he didn't. His gun cleared leather in a blur. The report cracked through the air like the sky tearing. Morrow jerked back, shock etched on his face as the ledger flew from his hand, pages fanning out like wounded birds. Blood blossomed on his chest, bright and spreading. He stumbled, reaching for something that wasn't there. A word, a threat, a god that had stopped listening. Then he crumpled on the courthouse steps at the feet of the people he thought he owned. For a heartbeat, no one breathed. Then everything exploded. Morrow's men went for their guns. Greyhawk's riders moved faster. Shots cracked, glass shattered, horses screamed. Caleb shoved Luke behind a pillar, firing into the chaos. Smoke turned the air thick and gray. Somewhere, a woman shouted prayers into the noise. It was fast and ugly, and over in less than a minute. When the smoke cleared, 3 of Morrow's riders lay dead or dying in the dust. The rest had dropped their weapons, hands raised, eyes wide with the sudden, terrifying understanding that their paymaster was cooling at their boots. Sheriff Dunn stood on the steps, gun in hand, chest heaving. He looked at Morrow, then at Caleb, then at the townsfolk. Slowly, he slid his gun into its holster. Anybody else feel like dying for a dead man's pride? He asked. No one answered. Luke crawled out from behind the pillar, shaking. He stared at Morrow's body, then at Caleb. Is it done? He whispered. Caleb looked around, at the fallen, at the survivors, at the faces in the crowd, angry, stunned, hopeful, afraid. At Greyhawk, standing tall, paint streaked with sweat and dust. At Dunn, shoulders squared like a man who'd finally chosen a side. No, Caleb said quietly. But it started. He picked up the fallen ledger, its leather warm from the dead man's hand. He flipped it open. Names, numbers, places, proof. He held it up so everyone could see. This is what he thought you were, Caleb said. Lines in a book. Debts. Assets. Problems to erase. Today we decide if that's all we are. The widow with the folded deed stepped forward, spine straight. My husband didn't trip into that canyon, she said, voice shaking. He came home bruised and scared after one of Morrow's men warned him. Next day he was dead. You find his name in there, Sheriff. You clear it. A rancher joined her. Then another. Then another. Greyhawk took a step up, chin high. My dead are not in your book, he said, but their blood is. I will speak for them. Dunn nodded slowly. You have my word, he said. He looked at Caleb. All of you do. Luke tugged Caleb's sleeve. What about us? He asked. Me and you? Caleb looked down at him. The boy's eyes were raw, rimmed red, but inside them was something new. Not just hate, not just hurt. A fragile, stubborn flicker of something brighter. I killed the man who killed your daddy, Caleb said. But that doesn't mean you owe me anything. I can stay and help clean this mess, or I can ride out. That's your call. Luke stared at him like he was crazy. You think I want you to run again? He asked. You think I went through all this just to be alone? He swallowed, throat bobbing. You took my chance to hate you forever when you stepped in front of that gun, he said. Now all I got left is figuring out how not to. Caleb's chest ached in a way no bullet had ever managed. I don't know how to be anything but a gun hand, he admitted. Then you can learn, Luke said. Same as I gotta learn to be something besides a ghost. Greyhawk stepped closer. Every man chooses his road, he said. Some build towns. Some burn them. Some watch from the hills and wait for both to fall. And some walk between. He nodded at Caleb. My people will not forget today, nor will we pretend one dead wolf erases the teeth marks he left. But if you mean to walk better, we will not stand in your way. Caleb met his eyes. There was no forgiveness there. Not yet. Maybe never. But there was respect. That was more than he deserved. Sheriff, Caleb said, turning to Dunn. You're going to need help making sense of that ledger, keeping this town from tearing itself apart when it sees what it's been standing on. You offering? Dunn asked. I'm offering to stay until Luke's name is clean, Caleb said. After that, we'll see. Luke grinned, small and fierce. Sounds like a new chapter, he said. Caleb looked at the gallows, still standing empty against the sky. For the first time, the sight didn't make his stomach turn. It made him think of something else. Lines can be cut. Wood can be torn down. Stories can be rewritten. Yeah, he said quietly. Maybe it is. The wind picked up, carrying the dust of a dead man's empire out across the land he'd tried to own. Somewhere far beyond the ridge, thunder rumbled, promising rain at last. People drifted from the courthouse steps not with the dull shuffle of the beaten, but with the uncertain, fragile steps of those who've just realized they're not as powerless as they'd been told. A boy who was supposed to hang stood in the center of it all, alive. A man who'd been a weapon all his life stood beside him, hands empty for once, and didn't feel naked. He felt possible.